Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy and Kurt Leavins. Hey, guys.
Afternoon, David and Kurt.
Hey, Dave and Bruce.
Hey, guys. You're both looking very well lit today, I must say. Got excellent lighting.
This is natural light. I haven't got my normal lights on. I don't need them, I don't think.
Yeah, it looks,
Bay window in the middle of the afternoon. Usually it's midnight when we're doing these podcasts, or it was during that series.
It's the West Coast light filtering in off the ocean for me. So.
Yeah, the little Lotus Land glow.
Anything that can improve this space is a good thing.
Yeah, well, I think we could all join in that for each and every one of us here. Although, all right. We're going to do a quick podcast here. Well, it won't be quick, knowing the three of us, but we're going to do a podcast here between games podcast because there's a few days here between the games. It's not till Wednesday night. And the focus of this podcast will be two good things each that give us hope based on the last series against the Los Angeles Kings. And we'll go with one thing that gives each of us some dread heading into this series against the Vegas Golden Knights. I should add that, gents, if you were to believe the fans in Las Vegas, we are really, really up against the Vegas Golden Knights. They refer to the team in Vegas, the fans there, they call it VGK in their when they refer to the Knights. They go VGK all the time.
Vegas Golden Knights. It's like New York Islanders or New Jersey Devils have those.
Yeah, and that's generally how they refer to the team. Anyway, there was a fan there. There's not a huge online fan base there, but there's one fan, and I just did a post on this. His name's Tyler Cash, and he did a poll. 89% of respondents felt that VGK was going to win this series, with 78% saying 6 to 7 games and 9% saying 4 to 5 games. So it just goes to show that all fan bases are hugely optimistic at this time of year, especially coming off first round victories. I think that if you did a similar poll in Edmonton, you would get similar results with Edmonton. Maybe not quite that optimistic in Edmonton, but I suspect maybe so. There was another poll by Eric Friesen, who's an Oiler fan, and he found that 82% of respondents, and these are mainly Oiler fans, 82% of respondents thought the Kings would present a tougher battle than the Vegas Golden Knights. Just 81% thought the Kings would be, and 19% thought the Golden Knights would be a tougher out. And I do not agree with that at all. I think the Knights are going to be all that the Oilers can handle, and maybe a bit more. I'm predicting the Oilers in 6. But what do you think on that second question, gents? Who will be a tougher out in the end for the Oilers if, in fact, they can get the Vegas Golden Knights out, LA or Vegas? Bruce?
Yeah. When was this poll done?
Just this weekend.
So between the series.
Going now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, LA is done. We beat LA. Vegas is a problem now, and it's a big problem. And if you think this is going to be an easy series, they finished first in the West in the regular season. And the funky thing that is the NHL that is so worried about seedings and stuff that in the playoffs, they'll play 2 wild card teams out of their conference against the opposite division champions, out of their division. That's how they are about seedings. Yet in the next round, they got no problem with number 1 against number 2, which is what we have here. So the Oilers, they finished ahead of both teams in the other Western series, but here we are on the road playing against the number 1 team. But you got to take them on as they come and beat them as they come, and they got their hands full. Vegas is deep. They got their third D pairing, I think, is way better than LA's, and I think their forward lines are pretty solid up and down. Like they got pairings. They got 4 good pairings of forwards that play together a lot, and they, and they're going to create headaches.
Kurt,
yeah,
what do you think?
I picked the Oilers to beat the Kings in 6, and in my column this past Sunday, I picked the Oilers to beat Vegas in 7. Tend to agree with Bruce. I think Vegas is going to be a tougher nut to crack, although certainly not insurmountable. When you look at the regular season series between the two, they matched up very well. And there's a number of things in the lineup where I think the Oilers have decided advantages, and I think where Vegas has advantages, they're rather narrow. And so while, yeah, absolutely a tough match and a little tougher than LA, I still think if the Oilers play the way the Oilers can play, they will beat a very good Vegas team in a long series.
All right, let's go with something that gives you hope right now. We'll start with you, Bruce. What's giving you some hope for this coming series?
Well, one thing that's giving me hope is the Oilers' continuing ability to play well when their star players are not on the ice, and that was a big turnaround in this regular season. I wrote about it partway through the season and again later, and I'm sure we discussed it here a couple times. But when Connor and Leon, here we had a series where they started apart, but they wound up playing together. And when they were together, they outscored LA 5-3. When Connor was apart, it was 3 against and 1-4. And he was having some problems. And I think that's why they actually got put together after game 3. And Leon without Connor was 5-4, 2 against. But here's the key one, and it has been key to the season. When both of them are on the bench, Edmonton 4, LA 3. And, they held their own, or they a little bit won that part of the game. And it was the last 3 years, it was like 40%, 38% when those guys were on the bench. And, they'd have to play half the game and score at 60% to make up for it. And that's asking a lot. Whereas this year, the depth of the Oilers and the performance right down the lineup, and some of that is Connor and Leon themselves filling in on the fourth line and making it ultra dangerous. And some of it is having lines like the third line that even if they're not scoring, they're not giving up anything. And that was, I thought, huge to Oilers' success in that series. And it's continuing a trend that we've noticed all year. And if that works in the playoffs, man, you're in very good shape.
Yeah, the Oilers got a point from every skater in round 1 except Philip Broberg, and that's pretty good. It's so I agree with Bruce. It's significant.
Yeah, I think that in Vegas, I've been reading, listening to the Vegas podcast to get some insight into what the media people and super fans there are saying on podcasts. And one of the things they think is a huge advantage for Vegas is their depth on the third and fourth lines. And it's like newsflash. Haven't you seen the Oilers' third line, Fogle, Ryan, McLeod, has been really strong. And then you put McDavid or Draisaitl on the fourth line, and it just has transformed the Oilers in that situation as well. I don't really see. I'm more worried about the Oilers' second line than I am about the third and the fourth lines. That's where Vegas might be able to have some advantage. But no, I agree with you, Bruce. Like the Oilers without McDavid and Draisaitl on the ice, like there were games where the Oilers were protecting a lead where I kind of dreaded McDavid and Draisaitl on the ice because they're such offensive players, and sometimes they forget their defensive responsibilities. Where I had full trust in the McLeod line. For instance, when Derek Ryan was on the ice, I thought those other guys are not scoring. That guy is such a smart player, and Fogel's the same way. Fogel's become such a strong two-way player that I felt super sure. Now that I'll get to Draisaitl's most recent defensive performance, but that was my feeling at times during the series. Kurt, what is your thing that gives you hope? First thing.
Down the middle, particularly center ice. I think I mentioned the Oilers have a few significant advantages over Vegas. This is one of them. If you see a lineup in game 1 that goes McDavid, Draisaitl, Bukestad, McLeod, and I think that's probably what you'll see in game 1. I think you'll see those 4 guys lining up at center ice. I will take that over Jack Eichel, Chandler Stevenson, William Karlsson, Nicholas Waugh every day and twice on Sundays. And I don't mean any disrespect to those guys in Vegas, but I think it's a clear advantage for the Oilers. And you get, snippets of Derek Ryan, who I think likely is to play wing, but he'll take some key draws and things like that. I think those four centermen with their combination of speed and skill and ability in the faceoff dot, I think is a decided edge for this team. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, Mark Stone is a great defensive player. He absolutely is one of the finest in the NHL. But I always think it's more difficult to take away the offense of an opposing player when you don't play their position. When you're asking a winger to negate, the game of a center iceman, I think it's certainly not impossible, but it's more difficult, right? And physically, I think that Leon Draisaitl stacks up against Mark Stone just fine. And in terms of McDavid and Stone, I think McDavid, from a speed and ability standpoint, isn't in trouble either. So I think those 1, 2, 3, 4 slots down the middle at pivot give me a fair modicum of confidence that the Oilers can pull this off in the 7 games that I think it'll take.
Yeah, I thought actually, well, Kurt, it's interesting because I thought actually Kopitar and Danault were much better last year in the playoffs than this year. And I'm quite worried about the Vegas centers. I think that's a real area of strength on that team. And yes, when you have McDavid and Draisaitl at center, I mean, it's kind of hard to beat that. And McLeod is no slouch. Bukestad's these are good hockey players as well. But I just think you might be right about I'm going to say you are right about the gap between the two groups. Edmonton has the superior group. But the Vegas group of centers, I mean, people in Vegas are over the moon about how Chandler Stevenson and William Karlsson played against the Winnipeg Jets right now. Yep. They thought those two guys just crushed it. We're the best Vegas players.
Yeah, and then there's the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, it's the Winnipeg Jets who are tough. That's a good team. So I'm just saying, just listening to them, this isn't something I would have said before I listened to the Vegas guys, but they're saying a few things like this is the healthiest the Knights have been in forever.
Okay.
And they thought Eichel stood up to the test of the first round of the playoffs, that he got better as it went along. It's going to be a chore for Eichel, I think, defensively, because he's one of these guys who's all his life puck on his stick, puck watching. I'm just, he's going to be if he can't play defense, if he can't step up on defense the way McDavid and Draisaitl have learned to do in recent playoff years, Vegas is in trouble. But I think Karlsson and Chandler Stevenson will have that down. And Nicholas Roy, I mean, he scored a huge goal in overtime against the Oilers. He's a good two-way hockey player as well. So
I think they're all third-line centers.
I love that. I hope they are. Even Eichel, not Eichel.
No, Eichel's a first line center.
All those other guys.
Defend. Yeah.
Okay. I hope you are right. I'm just going on what they're saying in Vegas. There. Kurt, if you're just listening to this, Kurt just made the crossed fingers, like hope good luck mark.
I'm pretty confident though.
My good thing is, Bruce, do you want to weigh in there?
Yeah, those are pretty good 3 Cs. Chandler Stevenson and William Karlsson. I mean, ideal if you got a really deep team. One of them is their 3C, and the other one's their 2C. And Jack Eichel is he's definitely a 1C. And I've been watching them a little bit more lately. The one thing that surprises me about Eichel is how fast he is, and he's got some he's got not quite lightning in his boots, but he's not big and slow and deliberate. He can really move out there and make plays as he goes. And it's going to be fun to finally see him against Connor after all these years, after the 2015 draft. Here we are, David and Eichel, and I kind of hope they match up against one another.
I was way more worried about LA's centers.
Kopitar is old, man. He looked old to me.
Especially after game 3, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, we shall see. We shall see. My first thing that gave me hope was So last year in the playoffs, Connor McDavid went, as we all say now, supernova. This year, Leon Draisaitl has done so, and especially in Game 6. I thought he played the best defensive game I've ever seen Leon Draisaitl play. I'm going to be writing a post about this because I went through the video again. I just wanted to make sure that I was right about that, and that I maybe had, maybe I just saw a few things that made a big impact on me. But no, I was right about that. He won almost every single battle that he had in the defensive zone, and he did so because he cheated for defense. He put defense first in that game. He was often the first man back on the back check. He was and when he came back with a mission. He was charging back and hacking down Kings players legally. He was using his feet to defend instead of his stick. He wasn't trying to knock down passes in the defensive zone that were, they're going to shoot by him. He was covering his man. When Leon Draisaitl plays like that, we know the offensive thrust that he provided in the playoffs has just been outstanding. It's been outstanding 2 years in a row. But defensively, he wasn't able to do it last year because he was injured. This year he is. And if he's playing like that, if he continues to put defense first like that, man, the Oilers are going to be hard to beat in these playoffs. It's the thing that gives me hope they're going to win the Stanley Cup. In the Gretzky era, it was the case that the better player in the playoffs, the better center in the playoffs, was more often than not Mark Messier than Wayne Gretzky. And it's because when the going got tough, Messier had the size and the ferocity and the intensity to fight through it. It's just the way playoff hockey is, and this is no slight on Wayne Gretzky at all. But Mark Messier, and he won the Conn Smythe one of the years, and I think in a number of the years, he was the go-to. He was the guy in the playoffs, and I think we're going to see the same dynamic somewhat if the Oilers go forward with Draisaitl and McDavid. I've thought this for a long time. We didn't see it. We haven't seen it. Except in 2017, we didn't see it in the playoff years between then and now. And I'm not quite sure why a couple of years, but last year, obviously, because Draisaitl was hurt, he just couldn't mount that kind of game. He's fully healthy now. I've never seen him skate better than I saw him skate in Game 6. I've never seen better defensive intensity. And if he keeps bringing that, good luck any team that faces Leon Draisaitl right now.
He's playing phenomenal. I've been sort of loosely doing the Messier comp to him for basically all this time, in that from 2015, the trio of McDavid and Draisaitl and Nurse have loosely reminded me of the trio of Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, and Kevin Lowe that all came to training camp together in 1979. I kind of hope to see the team coalesce around them in a similar fashion. It's taken a little longer, let's put it that way, but there's still hope. And 29, like if there's one thing that I haven't been concerned about this year, that he wasn't going to dial it up at playoff time. I just knew it was going to happen. Messier did that every single year that he was here. His stats were better in the playoffs when most guys' scoring stats were, usually dropped by 10% on a per game basis, and his were going up, because he just dialed his game up to that level, and the careless mistakes didn't completely disappear, but they were minimized. And when he was one-on-one with the guy, and he was focused and determined to get that puck, well, guess what? He usually got that puck. And I see the same with Leon.
Yeah. You know what? I see Leon in a very similar light, David. I agree with you. And this is where I kind of veer back to my point on Vegas' centers. If we look at the LA series, if we agree that Leon Draisaitl was a 10, well, then I'd say Connor was probably an 8.5 in that series. He was really good, but not great to transcendent, right? But I think a huge amount of the time, Connor was skating around with two guys on his tail. They had two layers of coverage on him all the time.
Yeah.
But I also thought LA had the superior defensive forwards to do that job. I don't think, and Vegas is very deep at forward, but I don't think they have the same quality of defensive forwards. And I think that as a result, Connor's going to have a little bit more room. And that in turn sets up Leon Draisaitl for a huge series. Because if Connor is able to crank it up another level, and Vegas has to pay even more attention to him, Well, then, as you say, Leon Draisaitl's already playing maybe the best hockey of his career. If he gets more room, look out. So I agree with your assessment on number 29.
Do you think they're going to go 11-7 then, Kurt, or 12-6?
I think at the start they'll go 12-6. I'm pretty
Okay.
confident of that.
Cool.
Janmark's ready? Is
Yeah.
Janmark ready to go?
Well, that's what I've heard, that he was.
If he's ready,
practice.
then I think so. 12-6 as well.
I hear he's ready to go, and as I wrote on Sunday, I don't think you could look at that game 6 on Sunday and pick out a forward you'd pull out of the lineup. So I think it would be Broberg, Desharnais, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bruce, what's your second thing that gives you some hope here?
They could use his help on the penalty kill as well. But yeah, my second good thing, I'm going to go to numbers as I usually do, but to frame the issue. Looking at from the first round of the playoffs, the penalty kill percentage by team, 16th and last were the Los Angeles Kings with a lovely 43.8% penalty kill, which of course is the inverse because they only played one team, of the 56.3% power play efficiency that the deadly Edmonton Oilers unit put up in that series. So let's wander all the way up from 16th to 15th. And here we find Vegas Golden Knights had a 58.3 kill rate against Winnipeg Jets in the first round of the playoffs. And I'm thinking that there's gold in them there hills.
I agree, Bruce. They're worried about this in Vegas a lot. What they do say is, if you look, Vegas, I think I can't remember. Jesse Granger is for The Athletic. He reported these stats.
I read
They're available to everyone. But Vegas is the least penalized team in the NHL, and they get the most penalties called against them. Now, he credits that with people in Vegas will say it's because Vegas defends by moving their feet. They're a very disciplined team that doesn't reach and doesn't stick people. They get in front of you, like Leon Draisaitl did in Game 6. They use their feet and they get in front of you. That may be the case. It's kind of weird, though, that there's a team that draws the most penalties and takes the least penalties. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying that. I don't know what's going on with that, but that did strike me as awfully monumentally good refereeing from the Vegas perspective. But the Oilers might not get a lot of power plays against Vegas if the regular season trend holds true.
Well, they didn't get a lot against LA, and they got 9 goals.
Good comeback, Bruce. Good rejoinder. Indeed.
It's unreal.
It's like, can it continue? Can this continue? Like, it's just so. Obviously, it would be really difficult to keep clipping along at 55, 60%, but
33 from the regular season sounds
that would
pretty
be good
to me.
Yeah, me too. Kurt, your second good thing that gives you hope.
Confidence. Going into series number 1 against LA, I don't think any Oiler was under any false impression that LA was going to be anything but damn tough. I think they went into that series anticipating a real battle. That's what they got, in fairness to the LA Kings. But I think having started that series, shifted their tactics somewhat when they fully understood what LA was coming at them with, and then dispatching them in 6 games, I think they can look at themselves in the mirror, shake their heads up and down and say, okay, job done. And I think that's a huge vote of confidence heading into round 2. Now you may say, oh, Vegas is going to say the same thing after first round win. Okay, that's fair. I then refer back to the season series against these two teams. And of the 4 games, the Oilers won 3 of the 4, including both of them in Vegas. So sure, Vegas, by finishing ahead of the Oilers by 2 points, get home ice advantage. I think there's lots of evidence so far in these playoffs that home ice advantage doesn't mean squat to anybody. But let's say it was an advantage to Vegas. Well, in the season series, it was no advantage. It was no real advantage at all. The Oilers won both times there. So I think they've dispatched an opponent that they felt was really going to be tough, and they're moving on to a team who I think they feel pretty confident that they match up well against. And on a team like the Oilers with so many offensive tools, if you're feeling it, if you're confident, that's a pretty dangerous combination.
That I completely agree with.
I remember well that last game in Vegas where the Oilers really ran their show to the tune of 7-4, and they were on another level for the whole second period, as I recall, basically. And I think they scored 4 goals in that one frame, and they had the puck for about 17 and a half of the 20 minutes, it seemed like. And it was, you'd like to think that the most recent game is the best evidence, but the other ones were all, I think, 4-3, and 2 of them went into overtime. And
Yep.
the thing is, Edmonton hasn't lost a game in Vegas in this decade. I was at the last game Oilers lost in Vegas. Of course, I picked that one, and it was in 2019. And since then, the Oilers have swept the season series there in, I guess it's 2 years, because they had 1 year where they were in the silos and we didn't play them at all. And I think during the COVID season, they might have played once. So I think they won 5 in a row, Edmonton, in Vegas. So they're not intimidated by the building. Let's put it that way.
So my second thing that gives me hope is, I'll just build on what you're saying, Kurt. I think most of the Oilers players will have like arrows pointing up in terms of increased confidence as they were before the Kings series. Most, but not all. But 2 of them that I do think answered some questions for themselves against Los Angeles are Darnell Nurse and Evander Kane. Nurse really struggled in a couple of the middle games in this series. He was running all over the place. He was trying to do too much, and he was making major mistakes that was costing his team goals against and unforced errors. But in the last game especially, I thought the last game was the best playoff game that Darnell Nurse has ever played, easily. And his defensive play, he was shutting them down constantly. He was in tough because the line he was out there with that night was often the Bugstad line, and Cody Ceci didn't have a particularly good night, but he did. And the reason they didn't score was because of him. He was shutting those guys down in the slot because he stayed in the defensive slot. He was in position that game, and he like Draisaitl, so fast to pucks, so quick to pucks, getting there first, constantly getting there first, beating the opposition players to it. And if he didn't, taking it off them or blocking their way to the net. He rushed the puck a couple times effectively, but that wasn't the aspect of his game. He rushed the puck on the winning goal, as a matter of fact. It was his great rush up the ice that triggered that whole play. Yep. But he was outstanding. So the fact that he reached that level after cratering, essentially maybe having his worst game of his career in, what was it, game 4, he came back and played a lot better. So I'm not sure if it was 4 or 5, but it was a really quick turnaround for Nurse. That's got to give him confidence and his coach's confidence, because it's hard to imagine they weren't a little bit concerned with what was going on out there. The second player who stepped up was Evander Kane. And now Kane, we know, has had 2 major injuries, the wrist cutting, and I think he had broken ribs, and missed a lot of time this season. Apparently Braden McNabb of the Knights has broken ribs right now, by the way. Yep. So Kane missed a lot of time, and when he came back, he was not good for at least a month. And then as the regular season was coming to an end, he had some good games mixed with some indifferent performances. His hands around the nets still don't seem as sharp as they were, but his outside shot is evidently there. He can still really drill the puck. But what he brings to the Oilers is he is the most, I'm not sure about this because I haven't seen all the teams closely, but he may be the most intimidating player in the NHL. The other players, the other teams fear him. And when he's on the ice, it just adds an aspect to the Oilers that that is essential to winning a hockey game in the playoffs, is that physical intimidation of the other team. He's bringing it. And he was tossing off the Kings like it was like a boy throwing children around at times. His play in that regard, the fact that even though he's banged up apparently right now, he's fought through a number of injuries, like the fact that he's doing this And playing at a high level of two-way play is just really encouraging, because Kane in the playoffs last year at times was the Oilers' best player in a number of games. And he hasn't quite reached that level yet, but he's getting there. And if he can bring that against Vegas, there is no answer to that. Do they have a player who can stand up to Evander Kane physically? Do they have, is the what he brings going to pervade the game when he's on the ice and make just have the Vegas backing away? I hope so. We've seen that in other playoff series with the Oilers. Again, Messier. We also saw it with Chris Pronger. The last time the Oilers made the Cup final, they had that player in Pronger. And I think they have it now in Kane. So that's my second encouraging thing.
Well, David, I can tell you that the Oilers this year with against the Kings, they played 2 games without Kane. They lost both games 3-1 and 6-3. And then they had Kane back towards the end of the season. They played LA twice in a row, and they beat him 2-0 and 3-1. But what they did was they got into the trenches with LA, and I thought they were the tougher team in those 2 games. And I also thought they were the tougher game in this first round series. And again, Kane, of course, now he's played 8 games against the Kings this year, and the Oilers are 6-2 in those games and 0-2 in the 2 that he missed. And I think that's one team for sure that he's got into the heads of. I know of their fans. And there's I remember he did this last year when he scored the empty net goal at Game 6. We're going to Game 7, folks. And of course, Oilers won Game 7, and now it's it's 2 years in a row, and you can bet that he's had an effect on both series. And this year, I thought he played better as the series got deeper. I thought he was looking, not his full self at first, and then he scored big goal in Game 4 to tie it late. And then he scored a goal in Game 5, and it's just his game just seemed to be coming around and coming up a bit. And last game he made a couple big defensive plays. So it's he's one guy at least that seems to be getting stronger and better. And let's hope he can bring the same level of game up to Vegas in terms of getting in their faces and getting them off their game.
What I like about the 2 players that you picked, David, is that I think in the playoffs, to a large extent, teams succeed if they have talented players who really excel in the rough going. And I think both Nurse and Kane, when they're on their game, are those guys. They are playoff performers. That's how they're meant to play. And so I agree. If both of those guys have arrows pointing up, that's a good sign.
Leon too.
Yeah, and Leon. And to some extent, McDavid. He's a big guy, and he's got some ferocity. Like, this team is not going to get pushed out of the playoffs by any team. And it's interesting to see Matthew Tkachuk and his performance against the Boston Bruins, as opposed to his performance just last season against the Edmonton Oilers, where he disappeared in that series because of Evander Kane. Evander Kane got in Matthew Tkachuk's head, took him out of that series. And that didn't happen against the Boston Bruins, and he took over that series. I mean, he was outstanding. So maybe he learned something, Tkachuk. But he's one of the players who has that aspect to him as well, who's kind of a fearsome, intimidating player. And it's good to have those players. They're rare in the NHL. There's usually 3 or 4 at any one time in the league, and you want one of those guys on your team. Let's go to the things that give us dread. Bruce?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go to my old standby injuries that I always dread as some part of some possible future, where something happens and you lose a player or players for a short or long term, and you lose a bunch of players at one position, right? And every team has to face these fears. I'm happy that Oilers got through the first round of the playoffs with their entire D core still intact. Those guys, the main ones of them, have played it all season long. CC missed 2 games for childbirth, and that was the only one of the top 5 that missed a game. and so that's been great. Up front, like my concern that the Oilers put Leon with Connor to when Connor got banged up a little bit. It certainly solved an issue on the first line, but my concern is the second line. That's also a little bit related to injuries, and that we don't know what's going on with any of Hyman or Nugent Hopkins, and there were signs, they were off their games at times and for significant times in the first round series, and we don't quite know why. But we do know that line would be a lot stronger with Leon down the middle and Connor up front on the other line. And I think against Vegas, that is the more ideal thing. So the question is, are these guys healthy enough to deploy in their strongest fashion? And that's, I guess, it's sort of a perma fear, but it's always the reality, And any coach worth his salt will tell you, we'll go with the players that we got. No matter what happens, they'll keep on going. But I want to see the Oilers with their absolute strongest lineup all the way, right? I mean, that's what you want. And so the fear is something's going to prevent that from happening. And last year, that's what happened, right? Draisaitl and Nurse, they played through it. They toughed it out, but they weren't near the top of their physical games.
Yeah, all due respect to Ryan Murray, but he hasn't played all year, and when he did play, he wasn't great. And I'm like, the defensive depth, the Oilers have fairly decent forward depth, I think. Like, it's not, you don't want to lose anybody, obviously, and certainly not McDavid or Draisaitl, but the forward depth is less of a concern. But you get past Philip Broberg, and then you're at Marcus Niemelainen or Murray, and I'm a little worried about that.
Or Demers, yeah.
On Ryan Murray, I'm told he played one game in Bakersfield and started having burners again and got shut down.
Oh, so then it's Marcus Niemelainen
and Jason Demers.
And Jason Demers. So, Demers might figure it out. Like, he is a veteran player who apparently played quite well in Bakersfield this year. But yeah, so that's a little bit of I agree, Bruce. That's a big worry. Kurt?
What's my big concern?
Yeah.
I'm seriously concerned, and I'm really only seriously concerned about one thing about Las Vegas, but I do think it has the potential to turn the series in their favor, and that's why I'm so worried about it, and that's the Vegas forecheck. We're coming out of a series where we played LA, and LA and Vegas they couldn't be much different, but especially in this aspect. We saw that 1-3-1 forecheck from LA on display through all 6 games. Vegas is different. They've got a 2-1-2. They come hard, and their forward ranks are quick and they're heavy. And while I feel that the Oilers' defense handled LA just fine, I don't have the same degree of confidence with Las Vegas. And I'll be watching 2 players in particular. One, you're probably predicting that I'll say, which is Vincent Desharnais, who I have all the time in the world for. But at times, his lack of foot speed was exposed against LA, particularly a little earlier on in the series. These guys are going to be coming faster and harder, particularly faster at Big Vin. So he's going to be a guy to watch. The other guy is Evan Bouchard, who, look, Evan Bouchard had a fabulous series. I think next to Leon Draisaitl, he might have been the Oilers MVP of that series. 10 points in 6 games. But if you're suddenly putting a hard forecheck on the tail of Evan Bouchard, who, in my books at least, doesn't play with the maximum amount of intensity to begin with, I think we could see some problems back there. He is really going to have his head on a swivel and really is going to have to be playing with great intensity in order to handle that Vegas forecheck. I've got a higher degree of confidence. The other guys, both Ekholm and Nurse, skate really well and can handle the heavy going. Brett Kulak is a fabulous player who had a fabulous series against LA. I think Ceci should be fine. It's Desharnais and Bouchard that I'm worried about. And I think, as I said, it's the one place where I think the Golden Knights could take advantage of Edmonton. So I'll be watching and crossing my fingers.
Yeah, I just thought it was such an advantage for the Oilers in the end with the Kings hanging back every time. Anytime it felt like the game might be in doubt, the Oilers would have all this time just to reset in their own zone, no pressure, bring the puck out. You could stand there in front of your goalie and do a little jig and look around and see who you could pass to. I just thought, man, I know that Todd McClellan thought that was the best strategy to win. I don't know if it was. I think
even
that
in Game 5 when we had a lead, they played the 1-3-1.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I don't think it. I just think to beat the Oilers, Kurt, you've made a good point. To beat the Oilers, still, you want to get in there on the forecheck on these Oilers. Yeah. That's how you want to play in Edmonton's end of the ice. And to the extent that the Oilers got it in their heads, oh, we have to dump it in now and then. Like there was some plays where they didn't, where someone would take it up and they turn it over. But generally speaking, even the best players on the team were dumping it in, McDavid and Draisaitl. And because of that, the Kings' strategy, I just don't think it worked at all. I think they would have had a better chance. Now, this is how the style they're used to and the style they know. But the Oilers solved it. And I think you can't solve chaos. You can't solve speed and size. You can't solve aggressive forechecking. I guess what you do is you counterattack as fast as you can up the ice. And the Oilers are really good at that. I mean, that's how you stop the press in basketball, with your own fast break. Same in hockey. And the Oilers are really good at that. But there could be major trouble out of this, Kurt. I agree.
And the other thing I should add to that is they're going to need serious puck support too, because their defensemen are going to have that half a second less, I anticipate, which means your guys who are normally ready to go in the attack, they've got to be back just a little further, a little quicker. And I think that'll have an impact on the game.
Yeah, well, they've got. I like Bouchard for the reason that he's the guy most likely to burn them with that pass when they're coming in hard on the forecheck. And I also like, Kurt, his progression in terms of intensity level or alertness level. And I've seen him go back harder on retrievals, and I think that's a big thing. That's not just you have to get to the puck first. You want to get to the puck first and actually have a half a second to get your head on a swivel and find the guy up the ice, right? You would know this as a D-man. Hustle hard back on the puck and give yourself as much time as possible. I'm seeing more of that from Bush and on a more consistent level. And then, as I say, when you give him that time to look, or he gives himself that time to look, all the better. He's going to make that pass a lot of the time.
Yeah, and he can just put it over to Ekholm, which is a great security
blanket. Well, that's a nice
right?
option.
Yeah. He did that with Duncan Keith last year, and Keith is not the player that Ekholm is today. Like Ekholm is such a fantastic player. Ekholm is that kind of defensive defenseman and he's really moving the puck well. Okay, in some ways you've touched on some of the things I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about 4 players whose arrows are either sideways or down confidence-wise because of their performance. Well, maybe not their confidence. Certainly their performance was down. Hyman, Nugent-Hopkins, Desharnais, and Skinner. So I'll go through. So Hyman, I think, is his only problem, I'm guessing, is physical. I saw him kind of limping to the bench, obviously, after one shift in the last game. He does not look right physically. He about 2/3 through the way, he started to fade. Through the regular season, he started to fade quite noticeably. And then he took some time off and he came back strong. But he looks like, to me, like whatever is bothering him has been re-aggravated. He's not playing with the same determination, speed, success that he had earlier this year. He's playing hurt. That's obvious to me. Nugent-Hopkins, he's an inconsistent player at even strength. He's had good playoffs at even strength, good games at even strength, and he's had really poor games at even strength. In the Winnipeg series, he was both really good and really bad. The last game, he was their best player, their best forward of that Winnipeg series. But I just think it is it's tougher for him because he's a smaller player in the playoffs. He's just got to ramp up the intensity. He's got to make up his mind. Nothing's going to stop him. So, and he's capable of doing that. So I don't think either of those players have a confidence issue. It's something else. It's a preparedness for Nugent-Hopkins, just getting ready for battle and doing it. And Hyman, he's hurt. Desharnais has really struggled in a way that I didn't think he had not struggled like that all season long, as he did against the Kings. He had been remarkably sound with the puck, and he got the jitters in the playoffs. He got jittery with the puck, and sometimes jittery on defense. And on his show, Bob Stauffer alluded to the fact, I don't think he came right out and said it, but he hinted awfully strongly that he thought the refs had it in for Desharnais, that they were targeting him. And maybe Desharnais felt the same thing. He got away with a lot in the regular season in terms of stick work, and he just didn't. I didn't see that kind of super aggressiveness coming out of him. Perhaps fear of getting a penalty was holding him back. He's got to play that way against the Vegas forecheck. The way he's going to beat it is with fierce body checking, physical play, and he's able to do that. He did it in the regular season, but if he can't execute that, he's not going to stick handle or pass his way out of a lot of the problems. It's not his game, and so I am worried about that coming up again as it came up against the Kings. Stuart Skinner, I thought, had his best game in the last game. He looked to me tentative in the net for much of that series. We didn't see his best game. He looked like he wasn't as quick and assertive as he might have been, and as square to shots as he might have been earlier in the year in his best games. I think we did finally see close to his best game, though, in Game 6. I thought he looked really good until the unfortunate thing with the stick happened, where his stick got slashed. And it's interesting, I was watching that again. That happens quite a bit before.
Yeah,
the
like
slashing
2 or 3
of that
minutes
stick.
before that.
It happens, and did he not notice that his stick was broken? And I saw he was banging it on the ice a few times. Like he clearly
broke
thought
it then.
Well, he clearly thought this can happen though. Like you don't know your stick's broken. That's happened to everyone who plays hockey, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, my stick's broken. And anyway, he rebounded from that. He did come up with his best game. He made a couple big saves after that monster error, and so I'm kind of wavering on him whether he's a player of concern. Because he did play so well on that last game, and he went through that broken stick incident and came through it on the other side. Maybe he's going to be okay, because they're going to need him to play his A game more often than not in the playoffs if they're going to win the Stanley Cup and get by teams like Vegas. They got by LA without him doing that, but it's mainly because Korpisalo cratered in the last 2 or 3 games and started to Skinner was the better goalie in some of those games.
Absolutely.
Because Korpisalo let in some, if Campbell or Skinner had let in those outside shots, people would have lost their minds in Edmonton. So, but I am still a little on the fence with Stu, less so than I was before Game 6, but I have my concerns there.
I heard a really great quote from Stu that I can't give you verbatim, but he was talking about all the things that he learned from that series, and he just listed off just bullet points, good and bad things, right? How the first game got away on him, and how he coughed up the puck, a broken stick, the bad luck of the broken stick, but also the things that he learned in terms of, I can give up 1 or 2 goals that I'm not happy with, but still win a game, like Game 2, and his balanced mindset. And he said, I'm a better man for all of these things, right? And this is a guy who's still formerly categorized as a rookie. And so this is a guy who sounds like a young Ken Dryden, at least he did in that clip. And he just had a real sort of balanced view on stuff. And boy, if you like that in a goaltender, I know I sure do. Goalies have a reputation to uphold for being a little bit off of our rockers, but I kind of like the stable ones. And Stu is all of that. And he did recover. And, he made a save about 8 seconds after Yamamoto's goal. It was really the only chance Kings had, but the Oilers screwed up right off the face-off, right after the goal. And Skinner made a huge save. And, if they score then, get it right back like that, all bets are off. And so he came up with the giant save at the right moment, and that's really all what thing you want most from your goalie.
Sorry, go ahead, finish off, Bruce.
No, I'm done.
Well, I was going to say, here's where I'll throw in what I think is maybe the elephant in the room and has to be Vegas's biggest weakness. Does Laurent Brossoit strike fear into the heart of any Oiler or Oiler fan? Like, no disrespect to the young man who has played pretty well, had a pretty good series against, I'll say it again, Winnipeg.
His old team.
Yeah, but
his other old team.
His other old team. But this is a guy, he's a career NHL backup. Like, against, the top scoring team in the NHL and the number one power play in history. Maybe he'll take this and shove it up my behind. But when I look at it, I don't think there's any kind of a mismatch at all in goal between these two clubs. If anything, the Oilers have an edge, and that's with a rookie in the starter's net.
He's such a weird goalie. When you look at his stat line, of career stat line, he alternates seasons when he has like a 920, 915 save percentage with these 895, 895, 883 save percentages. He seems to be really hot and really cold. Now, he could be on a hot streak. He had a 915 save percentage in Vegas. They were raving about him. They say he outplayed Connor Hellebuck in that series, and I suspect that he did. So he's this goalie that seems to be super hot and super cold, and that's my memory in Edmonton. They said there was a lot of early goals on him that he was able to shake off. So maybe he's learned to do that as well, like to recover from a mistake early in the game and then get it together. Yeah, it'll be interesting, Kurt. Goalie, I just have no idea how Laurent Brossoit could just be outstanding, right? He could just come in here and turn out the lights of the Edmonton Oilers. But
that's not his track record, though, right?
Well, he does get hot.
Oh, he's got no track record. He played one game in the playoffs before this year. One game. He came in 2017 when I think it was the game where Edmonton got stomped 7-0 in San Jose after they'd shut out them. The two previous games, Cam Talbot had shut him out, and we got absolutely crushed in Game 4. And I think that was his one game. And now all of a sudden here he is, 30 years old, just a few weeks ago, and here he is, number one available goalie for a good, strong playoff contender. I mean, I'm congratulations to you, Laurent, for winning your first playoff series. I covered this guy when he was an Oil King, interviewed him, and chatted with him and a bit, and always followed his career with interest. And of course, he was an Oiler for a chunk of time. They got him by trade, and then eventually he moved along. But he's made a career out of it. He's played 122 NHL games, and now he's played 6 playoff games and counting. And maybe he's one of these late bloomers. He's been a backup all this time. He's been a backup, and that's why he doesn't see the playoffs. But maybe it's such an opportunity he's been waiting for.
Yeah, and I guess that's my point. He's been a backup his entire career because he's never been good enough to be a number one. It's no disrespect. The guy's still in the NHL, right? But yeah.
Well, there's been other goalies that have surprised. I mean, Steve Penny, remember him?
It's one thing to do it over a series. It's another thing to do it over multiple series. And as I say, he may shove this right in my face and prove me wrong, but I think it's a real advantage for such a dangerous offensive attack like the Oilers.
Well, in Vegas, they're convinced that playoff hockey starts with coaching and goaltending. And I just heard today on a Vegas podcast that this is something where the Knights have it all over the Edmonton Oilers in terms of coaching and goaltending. These are two obvious areas of huge separation between the two teams.
I see them the opposite on both counts.
Well, goaltending is a little bit of a mystery. It's voodoo, as we know, but they've got. And I remember playoffs of '92 when Ed Belfour took Chicago to the Stanley Cup Finals, and his little used backup goalie was named Dominic Hasek. He just needed a chance on a team that was his own. And Mika Kiprasov is another of many, many examples. Cam Talbot, that the Oilers got off in New York because he couldn't get over Lundqvist. Well, Laurent Brossoit couldn't get over Connor Hellebuck.
Yeah,
maybe he just needed a different look.
Yeah, there's lots of stories of goalies suddenly getting hot. There's too many for my liking. With and I do think we know generally what we get with Stuart Skinner, but
Yeah.
like it's either going to be his average game or his above average to good game. Like he's that kind of goalie, and that's probably enough for the Oilers. If you can get at least to that above average game in 4 out of 7 or 5 out of the 7 games. Yeah, we'll see with Laurent Brossoit. Like he was part of that trend of letting in early goals and with the Oilers. And I have no idea.
I think if the Oilers get average to good goaltending from Stuart Skinner, they win the series.
Yeah, I agree.
And David, you make the best point about Brossoit, and why I'm sort of having a glint in my eye when I'm talking about him being a backup. But his stats going from really good to way below average to way above average. It's been every year of his entire career. It's been, well over 900 one year and well below 890 the next year, or certainly below 900. And this is one of his up years, and at least a little bit that he's played, because he had to come back from, I think, surgery this year, and he spent time in the minors, and now he's got his chance, and he says he's making the most of it. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, Wednesday night, and then Friday and Sunday. Are those the next games? Is that how? Yep. Is it Sunday?
I'm hearing all Sunday, right. And then Tuesday.
Yeah. Sunday. It was always going to be Sunday here, even if it had been Tuesday, Thursday, because there's Rogers Place. We've got Shania Twain.
Yeah.
On so Friday, I don't know how they're going to do the watch party there. That could be interesting. Because it's unbelievable how many people they got out to those things. Pack the building, and then they'd pack the terrace. It's astonishing to see.
Even my wife, who's a pseudo hockey fan, looked at the watch party the other night here on television. She said that would be awesome. So It's like, I think everybody looks at it that way, right? So
it is the most amazing phenomenon. I guess how many other NHL cities have that going on, where the rink is full on game night? Is that right? It's a common thing now.
It's become that way, yep.
I don't know how many other cities fill the whole arena as opposed to just the bowl, though.
Right.
Yeah, amazing. That is an amazing. It is a fantastic thing. I mean, when people fought for the downtown arena, this is what we hope to see. We hope to see downtown come alive like this on game night and bring the whole community together. And it's happening right before our eyes. So that's really fantastic.
And I can tell you, all the Oilers fans out here in the West Coast have come out of the woodwork. It's pretty fun.
Seen some flags, are you?
You do, yeah. I was at a baseball game on Saturday here on the island, and there were 3 different people were wearing Oilers jerseys. So
nice. I saw a guy drive by me yesterday flying Leaf flags here in Edmonton. So brave fellow, but he had reason to be happy. I actually gave him the thumbs up. 18 years without a single series win in the playoffs. I think the only team in this cap era that Toronto won a series ahead of was Seattle. And Seattle won their first series the next day in their second season in the league. And Toronto, but so good on them, I guess. But gents, I got a trivia question for you. Jay Woodcroft is been Oilers head coach for a season a bit. This is his second playoffs, and he's won a playoff series, at least one series in each of his 2 years. And the question is, which Oiler coach was the last one to win a playoff series 2 years in a row?
Ooh.
Well, isn't it Muckler?
No, a little after Muckler.
Ron Lowe?
You got it.
Oh,
the win, Kurt. 25 years ago, 97, they beat Dallas in overtime in Game 7. The famous Todd Marchant goal and the famous Curtis Joseph save. And then 98, when they upset Colorado on back-to-back shutouts by Curtis Joseph in Games 6 and 7, which I think was his 30th birthday. And since then, I mean, the Oilers made the playoffs 3 more years in a row after that, but they couldn't beat Dallas, who they played in the first round every year. And just until this last run with Ken Holland, they never even got in the playoffs 2 years in a row, let alone win a series. So last year they finally won a couple of series, and now this year we got another one, and it's starting to feel like a build.
Yes, indeed. Especially, and now we have the Avs and the Bruins out of the playoffs, and the odds makers and the analytics people are saying the teams most likely to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals are the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers. And I'll tell you what, you don't want to get ahead of yourself. Although I have made a prediction already, the Oilers are going to win the cup. So, but predictions are predictions. But that would be fantastic. That would be the most thrilling hockey experience in the NHL, I think, that the Edmonton Oilers and Toronto Maple Leafs fans have had. At least, living memory to Toronto. But I just think it'll be out of this world.
I think Canadian fans would love it. I'll bet you Gary Bettman's not a major fan of it.
He wouldn't mind it. I don't suppose that a one-off that the whole country of Canada is going nuts over hockey. That's not all bad by any means. But 56 years ago tomorrow, we're podcasting on May 1st. 56 years ago tomorrow, May 2nd, 1967, Toronto won their last cup. So I've got a Maple Leaf Gardens calendar on my wall from that season that was gifted to me some time ago. And because it's 56 years, it's a perfect cycle for the same weekdays. So I've had it on my wall all season long and enjoying the old trivia and all-star teams and such from those days. And 56 years though, man, oh man.
Yeah.
I remember it. Do you?
No.
I don't, but my late father was a Leafs fan because when he grew up in the 30s and 40s, that was the only game you could get on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, he had an autographed Johnny Bauer jersey that hung in his porch. So
yeah,
wonderful.
My dad was a Leafs fan as well because for the same reason. Yeah, it would just be fantastic for this to happen. We'll see what comes about. We shall see what comes about.
My dad was a Leafs fan. My brother is a Leafs fan. I was a Leafs fan until the merger, and I had to choose. And choice was obvious. I was a season ticket holder of the Oilers, and Toronto had Harold Ballard. So
yeah, they lost me when they traded Darryl Sittler.
I love that Leaf team with Roger Nielsen. I have to say, that was I was rooting for that team. Yeah, Dan Maloney and
Tiger Williams.
As for the NHL, Kurt, I think that you have a point, and I think that they love it when U.S. markets do well. That said, they can bill in terms of billing this series to the U.S. They'll America's superstar against Canada's superstar. It's an obvious peg for them, and I think that the excitement of that, they might be able to sell that.
Yeah, I just think the TV ratings will do what we expect they'll do when there's no American team in it, right?
You're probably right. All right, gents, let's leave it there.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
See you guys. And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.